Well, that
Well,
didn't work out the way it's supposed to.
no, that it wasn't quite it was only part way there. So that's all right.
Absolutely. Hey, what's an episode without a little bit of a restream glitch somewhere along the line?
That's right. It's perfection. No one wants perfection. They want to see the flaws.
That's right. That's
So,
right. Show the
so
warts.
hey,
I thought I
Nicholas.
was the cooler, so you guys always have something go amiss. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. What did we have last week? I think I don't know. Restream shut down last week, or I don't know. It did something.
Yeah, we couldn't stream to all of our different accounts.
Yeah.
That was last week. So
Hey, so
let's
anybody?
go back.
Yeah, so welcome back. Episode number 144, Mastering Modern Selling. I don't think we're going to get Carson today, although you never know. He could fly in here at any minute. He's in the middle of a bunch of meetings. But Brandon, we're here and we have a great guest with us, Nicholas Louisi, which we're going to get into in a minute and talk about a lot of different modern sort of things that are happening in the world today of sales, which is what we do here on the show. Brandon, I want to thank again, as always, Fist Bump for their support. You guys have anything exciting coming up you want to talk about?
We're always exciting, but do we have
Well, I
anything
know you're
special right
excited. Yeah.
now?
I mean, do you have a big event or a big webinar coming up? Or
Yeah,
maybe
we got a
I'll
lot
ask
of
you about
clients
something?
doing the roundtables like we talked about a couple weeks ago. We got
Okay.
a lot of those going on that have been very, very successful for people in getting in conversations with their ideal customers in a very non-salesy, non-webinary way. That's been working really well. And no, other than that, it's Mastering Modern Selling Day.
Yeah, that was a good episode. Was
Yeah,
it 2 weeks ago where we talked about the
yeah,
roundtables?
with
And
Alice.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So Nicholas, tell us a little bit about you, your company, what you do, and then we'll kind of jump in on. We have a lot of good stuff to talk about. So
Sure. Well, first off, it's an honor to be here. Thank you guys so much. What you do for the sales profession is phenomenal. You're all entrepreneurs as well as great salespeople and phenomenal hosts. Talk a little bit about movies and that Brandon was, famous star in Back to the Future. I love that. Right. I feel like I'm part of 80s, 90s movie glory and royalty by being on the show. Sales performance team was created after a lot of work I did with a large marketing education company where we could kind of get the front end and top of the funnel, the marketing done. But a lot of business owners had struggles with sales teams, creating sales processes, and just kind of having that flow. They all kind of had their heart broken by salespeople that didn't work out, or people that wouldn't follow sales processes and functions. So we created this this black box, if you will, our playbook, if you will, while I was part of that firm. And then I was able to kind of jettison out. It was a good exit. We were kind of on our third or fourth owner. If you've ever been in the private equity world, you know what that looks like. And so it worked out really well. We've been doing it strong for like 5.5 years on our own. And we work with small to mid-sized businesses. We're in every industry possible and have clients from as far away as Alaska to New York, and then we have some international clients. So we see it all from all different industries and all different vantage points.
So you're not just focused on tech or whatever. You're dealing with a lot of more traditional, maybe industrial sales teams, stuff like that.
Correct.
Because of the tech stuff that's there.
Yeah. A lot of, we're in a lot of blue collar. We do a lot of service businesses, HVAC, junk removal, as well as we have some SaaS clients. We have marketing agencies, logistics companies. So we do it all.
So to kind of kick off, right, hence the show, right, we're mastering modern selling.
Sure.
What have you seen, and we try and do this with all of our guests, because we really get some great different perspectives, is if you look back over the last 12 months, what have you, or even this year, right, in 2025, what do you think is different? What's working? What's not working from a sales perspective? What are things that people are doing, like they're acting like they're Back to the Future in 1955 or whatever, and not in 2025? What are you seeing, and what do you think are the biggest challenges that companies have with some of these? I guess the gap of where they should be in a modern world and how they're actually operating.
Kind of where they're going to. So I think there's a couple things, and it's a great question. First off, the whole let's just throw head count at a problem, right, is it doesn't work, right? Let's just keep on hiring people and putting them on. And, I think that needs to be challenged at the C-suite, or if I deal with business owners, right? So they get that, right? They get that when we say just throwing people at problems isn't there. There's also the tech stack, or maybe there isn't a tech stack, but just throwing more tech onto it and really not having anybody maximize it, I think is really, really problematic, and it has to be fixed, right? So when we were brought in, we kind of have to unwind that. Third things that we see is sometimes the art of discovery has gone away, right? And especially at the SaaS companies, they kind of just want to run the demo. And even it's a features dump we see when we evaluate calls and listen to calls and that type of thing. So there is at some point some level of the mastery of selling has to happen. Just really going deep on discovery and understanding it, and really understanding the ICPs. We talked a little bit about that, and I know a lot of the work that Brandon does is really big on that. It's just really understanding the people around the table, the people that you're selling to, where they're at on the hierarchy or the org chart, if there is one, kind of what their pain is and what their fear is, and just kind of understanding that when you're putting together your solution as part of their next step. So those are the things that we see, right? I know a lot of times people kind of want to bash younger sellers, but I see that among all age groups, among all demographics, among all people, right? There's a lot of really good talent that we see. There's a lot of really good talent coming out of college. There's a lot of really good talent that's innate salespeople, and they just need to kind of be raw and polished. So I'm bullish on the future salespeople for that. I don't think AI is going to solve that. I'm sure you've had other people that have a different opinion on all of that. I think it's a great tool, but it's nothing more than a tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, that's good. I like those three, and I think I definitely agree with those three. Throwing bodies, throwing tech, and the lack of discovery, the lack of communication, the lack of ability of building rapport and demonstrating that you understand a prospective customer and where they're at and what they're looking to accomplish. Definitely see all three of those and agree with those.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Are companies still, you hear all this talk about layoffs and AI, causing layoffs, or certainly we're not hiring. Are you still seeing the companies are hiring aggressively and maybe over hiring on sales, or are you seeing sort of well, maybe we need to think twice, or could we be more efficient with AI or other things, or see how it plays out? What is there any trend at all, or is it kind of all over the place?
Well, it depends. So that's a great question. One is we have a recruitment division or a recruitment company. So we hope that hiring will always be there. It kind of created that to solve a problem. I do think that there are, if you're chasing a revenue number, and you can make the cost justification of adding to the headcount to get to that, or maybe you want to break into a new market, a new marketplace, or bring a new product into the marketplace, and you just need somebody to kind of carry that in their bag. We do see that. I do think that there's a level of, maybe on the SDR side, we're seeing a decrease in the headcount, right? That overabundance on SDRs, which is a different question probably, and you guys have touched it on your panel, is, are we creating modern sellers that don't know how to prospect, right? That's one of my mantras that I have. I grew up kind of, having to fill my own pipeline. And I think there's a level of experience that can't do that, or won't do that, or don't know how to start with that. So that's a different topic. But I think on the SDR side, they're seeing that, some of that will be taken care of. But listen, AI isn't perfect, right? I was testing out an AI voice option for a client, and they called my cell phone 15 times in 3 minutes, right? Well, first off, that's illegal in so many different ways, right? And we saw the one real estate agent that got a restraining order because she sent a text 150 times to one prospect. So the tech has to be kind of corralled in, and a lot of times we want that to be the solution because that's the easy button. But I think that's just the first part of the process and not the easy button.
So 150 texts to one person, was that automation gone wrong, or was that just an overzealous salesperson? Curious.
I think it's a yes and yes, Brandon.
Okay.
I think it was an extremely overzealous real estate agent, and the fact that she probably had to set it and forget a technology that she didn't know that was going on. We won't name names on the CRM system that may do that, and I think it just kind of blew up a person, and they said enough's enough and put a restraining order on her.
Whew. Yeah.
So, hey, I'd like to unpack
That's
the technology or the tech stack
Sure.
conversation a little bit. So, when you say they're over, you come in and they're maybe have overbought on technology. What are you seeing there? And then what is kind of the right tech stack for today or in today's sort of modern world?
Well, I think it just depends on the economics of um, that that we can focus on. So what can they afford, right? What can they afford per seller? So we're a big proponent of obviously some level of CRM. Now I think there's the CRM of yesterday is not the CRM today. We talked a little bit about that in game show. So it's the CRM that your team will use. And we have clients that have marketing automation systems and kind of are trying to retrofit those into CRMs, and the salespeople aren't doing that. So then now they're defaulting to Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets, right? So that in itself isn't going to work. So really, a CRM system that is focused on helping and having visibility into pipelines and in the deal flow. So that's the first thing that we want to make sure that we do. Then some level of we like some level of dialer amplification, right? Whether that's Titan X or something else, because we like the phone first if that makes sense for your audience. So really making sure that you're going after telephone numbers that pick up, right, and focusing on the right person. Some level of data enhancer, I think, is extremely important. Lincoln Sales Navigator really is a like a ante to get to the table in this day and age. So they need that. And I think if you have those four components, are really where you need to go. Some start throwing SMS systems on top of that. Other types of enhancement that I don't think you need. I don't want to name names because I don't. Maybe you have sponsors, so I don't want to insult any of them. But I think there's a lot of sales enablement folks that have went out there and either sold really well tech stacks that aren't needed, or people went out and bought thinking that that was going to be the solution. So here's a part of the tech stack that I don't see used enough, and I think it should be, and people may challenge me on that, is an LMS system that is specific for your sales team. So having a really good platform where reps can go out there and train and listen and do call reviews, and new call reviews go in there, and has kind of like its own little Slack system where they could communicate about, hey, I just did a really good call, especially if your entire team's remote. Right. I grew up on a sales floor. And so you got that real enhanced learning of being around other salespeople and hearing Nick say something 5 times and Brandon say something 6 times and Tom maybe saying something a little different and asking, hey, is that working? And we kind of got that osmosis. So I think you need a place to have that central location of that osmosis of learning so we can all learn from it and we can all get better. Right. Because it goes back to how do we get better on discovery? How do we get better on that? And I think reps are yearning for that. When I interview for especially younger reps coming out and I interview them, and one of the things they say is, what is my coaching going to look like? What is, who's going to be there to kind of make sure that I get better? I've been in some organizations where I got the job and then they had to do a cost reduction. So sales enablement got slapped and the VP of sales gone. And now it's just me and I got to deliver this number and nobody's coaching me up. And so if I hear that more than anything in new hiring for sales open recs that we have for clients. And so that gives me hope and that gives me positivity. But I think you have to have that as part of your tech stack, if you will. Long answer to a short question, Tom. I realize
No,
that.
I like that answer. I think the question I have is, are you starting to see more companies that are putting that emphasis back into training? I feel like over the last decade-ish, we tried to solve a lot of problems with tech,
Yeah.
right? And it was decrease in training overall. Here's your one day, and a lot of times that training was, here's our features, here's our functions, here's how we compare to our competitors, but not the human training, not the how do you lead a conversation, how do you ask questions, like how do you process through discovery to get what you want without going, let me just go through Bant here for a second, hold on, and walk through like a robot. And you have people on the other side going, what the heck are we doing? Are we seeing more of that training taking place?
It depends on the organization. It depends on kind of what they're, if they have a bent on that, or if they're of the ilk of, well, just hire people, right? And just kind of give them the one day of, here's who we are, here's our talking points, here's
But
our
shouldn't
here's our
shouldn't they have
script.
a bent on training? I mean,
I think they
shouldn't
all should. I really do. I mean, I'm partial to it, but I think those that do, we see move the sales needle faster
right?
if they will make that daily, weekly, and monthly focus, and then also have an opportunity for the reps to do it on their own, right? Whether they have time
Mhm.
carved out in their day or they do it on their own at night. But the best reps that we see and the best organizations are have that as part of their top three.
Yeah,
Yeah,
our go slow to move fast mindset.
yeah, exactly. And you know, uh, Nick, I don't know if I own a partner in a CRM company actually that works with vertical manufacturers and wholesale distributors. That's the only vertical that we work with. And their sales teams typically sell over and over to the same customer. So they're not doing they're doing some prospecting, but their book of business is predominantly how do I increase wallet share with my existing customers and build and grow who we're currently working with. And one of the biggest challenges they have is, and it's coming up, is having something relevant to talk to the customer about.
Yeah.
So other than just, hey, I'm going to bring some donuts and we're going to talk about the family, right? How do I come in and provide value and provide information and actually consult with the customer versus just being there to say hi and be a friendly face? And I think the training part of that is a huge part of that we're seeing is how do they use the data from the CRM? How do they use the data from analytics or other format? How do they use data about what's going on with the customer? And then how do they present that in a way? I think the training element isn't just, hey, how do you do your sales process, but how do you make sure that you're as
Mhm.
consultative, valuable as you can be to that, either to that prospect or that customer? Is that how when you say training, I assume that's kind of what you're encompassing in that.
100%. And there's also and I think you're saying too, or at least I would add the business acumen, right? So
Right,
having just an
right, right,
understanding of the business, the industry, what's going on, macro and micro. And I
right.
think really focusing on that to me has to be part of it, right? We have we do a lot of work in the medical side, right, of the business. We also do, different industries. The medical side, we're always talking a little bit about that. What's going on this daily things. So you're bringing that information to, whether it's you're sending reps to industry events outside of just selling events, right? So they just have an understanding of what's going on, because there's that coffee chatter that's going on while people are waiting, in the line for coffee, or just that you're getting in the bars,
Yeah.
as people are talking about the business and the industry as a whole. So I think that is equally important, and that's how you kind of just move out of features and benefits and demo dump, right? And just really becoming a trusted advisor. Might be a trite phrase, but really becoming somebody that is industry knowledgeable and really kind of moves to that next level. We were talking a little bit about, the round tables, right? And we have clients that we do sponsored buyer focused events where you're just putting people around the table, vendors and buyers, and having conversations, and it's dynamic and it's fun and it's great to see. And I think we need to do more of that. And reps have to take it upon themselves to be astute, right? And maybe spend a little less time watching the Yankees have a home run derby last night and doing some research, right? I respect that, but we have to provide them the tools, or at least the venues, to go find that information, to make sure it's the right information that we want them regurgitating into the field.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, go ahead, Brand.
that's right. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add to the roundtable thing is, right, if you do host a roundtable, and this is what I really was intrigued about in our conversation, Brandon, with you and Alice about this, is even if I'm not super fluent with the industry, that roundtable gives me the ability to start building relationships that are not perceived as the salesperson, but if nothing else, perceived as a industry connector, somebody who is a player in the industry, which then inherently is going to lead to more relevant and productive conversations one-on-one along the way, right? Because to me, that's what in the world I'm in, literally these salespeople have survived off of bringing donuts and bagels and saying, "How are you doing? What are you buying?" Right? And that's just not really working. It's certainly not growing. And as other competitors are getting more sophisticated, they're outsmarting them with much more intelligent, relevant conversations, and so they're losing their position within existing customers. So I think I could see that roundtable concept, even if you're not super fluent in the industry, it starts to elevate you anyway in that direction as you grow on that. Okay, Brandon, over to you. Sorry.
No, I was just say what Nicholas said. By the way, I agree with what you said there too, Tom. I think unfortunately, the term thought leader has been bastardized. It's overly used and it's not used in the right context. However, that thought leadership positioning is so relevant right now. And then we're talking about training and equipping salespeople to have proper conversations, to have valuable conversations. Then the company needs to have a thought leadership strategy and plan in place. Like you can't pat everybody on the butt and say, go out there and have great conversations and not have a system in place that is providing them the information that they need to go out and be known as that thought leader, or at least a great source of information that helps me do my job better, or helps me make decisions, or helps me think. It's one of the things, Tom, like I love about your other show with Kevin, is that you've kind of become the news inside of that the manufacturer and wholesale distributor industry. They come on and listen to your show for an hour and walk away more, smarter than they were before, more knowledgeable, aware of things. I think you shared it before. People will spend an hour on your show and then they go have conversations in the boardroom and the coffee, over coffee breaks or around lunch with their colleagues, and they sound smarter because they're gaining that information.
Right.
I think companies need to be much more strategic about it, because that is a unifier that so many companies aren't focused on. And so it could be that thing that just elevates you. The difference between, oh, somebody's going to bring us donuts again, but I'm on a diet, versus that person's going to come and share with me what's going on in the industry and help me feel smarter.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on, I want to get to playbooks because I know that's kind of the key title, and there's some, and even the concept of discovery and things like that I want to get to. But one more tech question for you, Nicholas, before we move in that direction.
Sure.
And maybe we were talking about this before we started, but you're talking about intent or signals, right? That are out there. Are you? Yeah, I have customers that are using Zoom Info and other sort of platforms like that for tracking signal or intent data. What I found is, though, they don't really know what to do with it. They don't know how to interpret it. They don't know really what it means and how it can actually. It's more of a novelty, I guess, than it is an actual value for them. Are you seeing that as an important part of this tech stack? And what is it? What do companies need to do to actually use it effectively?
So, we have this debate internally, and I'm part of a peer group of other CSOs about, Zoom info intent data or just intent data in general. And a
Right.
lot of times, it's messy, if you will, or there's some noise in it. There's a signal in the noise. But I think it gives you the ability to really have an understanding if where people are going to. The other place, now, the old days, it used to be there was forums, right? LinkedIn was great for forums and peer forums and having discussions, and people will kind of go to their peer groups or their forums for that. And there's some industries where those forums are very strong, whether they're on school groups or if they're on, some Facebook groups are still very robust, right? So there's different areas of where you get that, and you could really start having an understanding of what the conversation is going on and really where the technique is. There are some Slack groups that are very robust, right? That you could be harvesting for intent data. Now you have to balance it, right? There's X amount of times, but we see the best reps are trying to focus on what does that signal look like? What does that intent data look like? Either macro or micro, right? Inside and outside. And that's one of the things too that I think you could probably start harvesting if SDRs maybe sat on the marketing side of the business versus the sales side of the business. They could really be a really good conversation starter because they're sometimes on that front end of that conversation, and their metric is meetings. So therefore, they're going to not be trained, or they might miss some of the important conversations of what might be happening in the future. So I think I wish there was one magic bullet, Tom, because we'd be we'd be flying private versus in the front of the plane. But it's just what are you using and how are you filtering through all of that? And that certainly, could be a great utilization of AI. But there's a lot of different sources, and I think saying that for one industry, I hate to paint a broad brush. We look at it a bunch of different places, and you can kind of find it based on your industry. But there's a couple different wells of information that you just want to kind of harvest.
Yeah, and I think I do believe that intent and signal data will become.
Mhm.
I do agree with you. I think this is an area that AI can help filter out some noise
Yeah.
and present it in a way that is consumable by the average individual, and
Mhm.
you don't require like a data scientist to sort through it. I think that will be more a strategy as we go forward into the coming year and
Yeah.
over the next few months.
I
So I'll
think
use an example because I know, we want to give practical advice, right? And so in some industries, there's peer groups, if you will, right? So somebody should be on that. We do a lot of selling into MSPs. And there's a very large peer group that is part of MSPs. We're part of that. And I read that their internal forums, right? Hey, I have a question about this. Has anybody ever tried this? I'm looking for boots on the ground here. I read that every day because we have it's a book of business for us, and it's a very important book of business for us. So that gives me ideas of what they're talking about, right? What MSPs are talking about and what's going on in their business. Now, if I was selling to a different one, I would try to find out if there is a peer group, right? If we talked about, we don't do a lot of SaaS work, but there's a ton of them out there, right? There's a ton of these buyer focused events. There's a ton of these different, some of it's online, some of it's in physical, but I think you have to be out there and really focused on that. Now, are they going to do it on their own as a rep? Well, when I was first starting out and building up a book of business in a very certain industry or vertical, I did it on my own, right? In the old days, we had to read magazines, and somebody on this may not even know what a magazine is, but we had to go read the trade magazines, right, and understand those,
Yeah.
and cranes, and we hired clipping services to look for different articles. Right nowadays, it's a lot easier on the internet, but we should be out there focusing on that. And I think AI could go out there, kind of search it for us and bring it through. So
Go ahead, Brandon. Sorry, I think I cut you off before again.
Oh, no, you're fine. I actually was reading Jamie's comment over here. By the way, for everybody, and Aaron, if you're still on, sorry, we didn't get to your comments. If you're on with us live and you comment, and generally we see it anywhere. So if you're on Nicholas or mine or Tom's or any of the feeds, we can see the comments. So join the conversation. Let us know. But I think Jamie's question is interesting, and I'd like to pose that for Nicholas. Do you have a model to identify if a piece of tech is worth it, or how do you recommend navigating figuring out how to build an appropriate tech stack? I think that's a great. It's a general question. I mean, it's a high level question, but I love the heart behind it because there's so many options out there, right? There's so many options, and you're coming at it going, how do we make these decisions?
Yeah, so I think you have to kind of matrix it out, right? Kind of where do you want to go? What's the investment that you can make? What are the critical things that you want to drive? Whether that's intent data, signal data, whether that's deliverability of emails, whether that's getting through vis-a-vis your outbound for your telephone, right? So whatever that is, and then you kind of just have to kind of matrix that out. I went through it real quick. We're really a big, because we deal with mostly with small businesses, right? Getting them to spend a nickel is almost like getting a corporation to spend $100. And so really our tech stack is probably a little bit more basic than some of your other listeners. So I don't, but we really want to focus on those big four, right? The big four of data cleansing, data enrichment, deliverability, if deliverability is an issue, the phone, making sure that the phone is getting answered, making sure that we're hitting the right telephone numbers for the right people, and then really having a very strong, if you will, CRM that the team will use and is not a marketing automation system.
Sounds
Yeah,
like everything you said there had to do with like deliverability. Make sure you have the right phone numbers. Make sure that your email's getting out and getting to the right people. Is that what you're seeing is one of the biggest challenges? And I mean, for me, it makes sense. As soon as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, that sounds totally reasonable right now.
It's our biggest thing. First thing we do. First thing we do whenever we take over a client, we just took over a marketing agency 2 months ago, and I said, how's your deliverability for your phone? She goes, well, nobody picks up my phone calls. I said, are you calling businesses? She goes, yeah. I said, well, the businesses have to be picking up their phone. So my guess is you're coming across as spam. So we figured out she's coming across as spam, right? So she was a phone first business line, no one was answering her phone calls because she was coming across as spam. So what we did is we got her a litany of numbers that she rotates through every day or every other day. Can we confirm that they're not coming across as spam? And so now, what happened? Her connectivity went up. Her talk time went up. She was able to get to prospects as well as clients because she wasn't coming across as spam. So that's number one, right? Same thing we do on the email. Same thing we do on the SMS texting. Because of the fact that, if there it's going somewhere. And if nobody's responding, it may be that your messaging is horrible, but it also may be that it's all sitting in spam filters, right? Or it's all sitting in this, it's being blocked because it's coming across as spam. So we want to fix that first, right? So that's the kind of blocking and tackling that we do for the first thing that we do.
yeah, I think going back to Jamie's question, I like the way that she had put "worth it" in quotes there, right? And I think this may tie into what we're going to talk about here on the playbook. I think if you understand your process and your playbook, it becomes easier to evaluate, is technology going to help that or is it going to get in the way? Right. And I think sometimes we buy technology first and then we try and shoehorn it in when we don't really have a playbook, we don't have a process or whatever, and it generally doesn't work. But if you have a playbook or a process, then the technology is definitely going to potentially have the value to have more value and more, be more worth it as it relates to that playbook and that process.
Yeah. And I think, you maybe have to have a end of the year drill down on your tech stack too and evaluate, right? Okay, we thought XYZ was a problem. We made this investment of 123. Is XYZ still a problem? Yes. Okay. Well, then the tech stack and the investment of 123 isn't worth it.
Right. Right.
Are we utilizing it properly?
Right.
Well, let's think about that from an in-service perspective. From a is the team using it? Then from there, we did it have a champion? that maybe the champion has left our organization, so therefore, it wasn't the right purchase, or it just it isn't implemented correctly. So I think there's a couple different ways that you could look at it, but I do think and you guys probably see it more than I did. I saw the average, I think, tech stack is 500 plus per rep. I mean, if you have a large headcount, that's a lot of money in it. What is the payback on that? That's a monthly basis, right? And like I said, I deal with a lot of small to mid-sized businesses.
Right.
They'll make the investment, but they've also been, they're also cautious because it's coming out of their pocketbook, right? So you really have to kind of buckle in on that.
Yeah,
I think we've moved out of that era of let's go buy a bunch of tech and throw tech at it and see, and assume it works
Yeah.
without any sort of attribution or reporting to know if it is or isn't. I mean, hopefully most companies have moved out of that and been more critical about their decisions and the decision to continue with a tech.
I hope so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I say we're moving out of it,
Yeah.
I think it's becoming more and more of an awareness for people that, hey, we've got 15, we have 20 different monthly recurring fees that we're paying for different tech, and I like what you said. Who's championing each one? How are we documenting its effectiveness to make sure that we're spending 10 and making 50 instead of spending 10 and not making anything?
Right. And sometimes we'll even spend 10 to make 15, right? But that 5 times payback could be worth it. But if we could get, we
Yeah.
get 50 cents, I'm okay with that as long as there's utilization and it makes sense.
And
But
you have
correct.
awareness of what's
Yeah.
happening. If it's 50 cents, it's 50 cents, but at least I find so many companies just don't know.
And it used to be, there's companies still doing this, right? We'll go out and we'll audit your energy usage, right? And we're gonna renegotiate. We're gonna save you some money. My guess
Mhm.
is there's probably people saying, "Hey, we'll audit your tech stack," and if not, it should be a business line that we think about. And we're gonna give us a portion of that first year savings of all the different things that you buy.
Yeah.
I mean, I myself as a small businessman know, I bet you if I audited my tech stack, there's probably services I'm paying for that I don't utilize to the best of my ability.
I think the average, even maybe not so much small company, but the average company has over 80 technologies that they're buying between sales and marketing or paying for
Yeah.
every month on sales and marketing. And that could include LinkedIn Navigator. That could include, right, a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily be the enterprise type software. But I agree. If I went and looked at even my own personal stuff, right, I probably have 10 or 12 of something that I'm paying for.
Yeah, you're like, am I still reusing that? Or what? Yeah. So, yeah. So whenever I point a finger, I got 4 going back at me because I think that's the appropriate way to be.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move over to Playbook.
Sure.
Because that's what the show was about. 40 minutes into the show, we haven't talked about Playbook, but that's why you get when you come here to Modern Selling. And Brandon, you mentioned Aaron's comment earlier, and he had said something. Discovery has in fact disappeared, and you had mentioned that as well, Nicholas. Take us through a little bit about what is the Playbook, what are the key points of the Playbook? Is discovery, you had it for a long time, a lot of companies wanting to do discovery calls. How does that play through? Is it something that's permeated through the entire process? And take us, because you said one of the reasons you created your own company, right, is you had created a playbook in your previous company that you realized that sounds could be replicatable or applicable to other companies. So
Yeah, and we would bring clients in, right? So we were on the front end, the marketing side, but we realized there was a problem on the sales side, right? So the sales process and the playbook was not created in most organizations, and so we would do it very rudimentary, where we would bring everybody in, right, and bring all the key stakeholders, and then kind of put it on the old diagrams when we were all going through the black belt training, right? So plotted out with sticky notes of, okay, here's all the different steps, and here's now discovery, here's all the questions that we ask, and here's all the questions we should ask, and here's the objections, and here's everything along the way. And we kind of created it in the war room, if you will. Now we said, okay, let's take it out to the field take 2 or 3 reps, right? Let's train them up on it and means test it for them and see, does it make sense? And then let's bring it back in 60, 30, 90 days, whatever that is, and make the adjustments. And so the company really started out with creating playbooks, right? So it's kind of a passion for mine, if you will. Right now we're in the beginning. I don't know when this will air, but college football is going to be upon us, right? So it's everybody's favorite time of year. There are playbooks that they're reviewing, right? Here's all of our plays. If in this situation we're doing this, and I think companies don't do enough of that. But I think you got to go deep, and I think we talked a little bit about that, right? And so it's, what does the discovery mean, and not just the bant that we all have been trained on it and kind of get to, but really what are the discovery questions for all the different players around the table. What's the discovery for the economic buyers? What's the discovery for the operational buyers, or all the different series? And in that, and then from that, right, you test it. Does this make sense? Where are we missing some things? You listen to a lot of calls, right? Because I'm a big fan of that. I saw somebody when there was from Quorum, right? Or there's other firms out there that will kind of give you recaps of does it hit all of these things? And then you look at, what does my follow-up playbook look like? So what does follow-up look like? And it goes back to your folks, right? Just running around doing donuts, delivering donuts, not taking anything away from that. But many emails are the equivalency of that. Hey, just checking in, just bumping this up, right? Nothing more than delivering virtual donuts to people. At least put a gift card of
Without the
Starbucks.
donuts.
Yeah, without the donut, without the fun, right? And so
No sugar fix.
no sugar fix, no, we don't. So what does that look like? And what is our post-sale playbook look like? Because we don't spend enough time thinking through that. I'm a marketer as well as a salesperson, trained on both sides, very heavy in direct response. So I want to know everything all the way through, and I want to know what is my marketing message all the way through for all my different audiences. If I know that I'm selling to 7 different audiences now, I got to send different types of follow-up to different types of audiences, and taking that all the way through. And then what is my post-sale playbook? Right. So I think you have the pre-sale playbook, i.e. my prospecting, right? My top of the funnel. I have my middle, right? So what does that look like from a discovery section, from an objection handling section, from what of all my different tools to help me sell, or help my internal champion sell, if that's the way that I have to have that. And then what is my post or my follow-up look like? So I think we don't spend enough time on playbooks. We started out creating them, and they were very, very robust, and they could always be better, right? But then the last thing I realized is, a lot of times you call the company back and say, how's that going for you? We didn't implement it, or we only implemented a third of it, right? So then we started to get into the fractional sales leadership to implement and stay on for a 90-day, 120-day, full year sprint, to make sure that that entire playbook gets implemented, gets tested, gets means tested, and gets improved upon. Another long answer to a short question. I'm sorry, Tom.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So I got my mind's going in a few different directions here.
Okay.
And we're running out of time, so I'll try not to go in all different directions. Would you say, because I think a lot of people, if I've seen companies, the investment in playbooks tend to be more at the top of the funnel, quote unquote, or maybe the early stage of the. Brandon and I don't like the word funnel because but in the early stages of the sales process that's there. And yet where I see probably the biggest chasm, if you will, of lost deals is post that initial meeting, whether that's a demo, or I'm giving you a sample, or I'm giving you something that gives you an idea of what we do. And then what often happens, right, that becomes the point where it's an opportunity, but then that opportunity stalls and nothing happens. And then you get the emails, hey, just checking in. Hey, what's happening? Hey, following up, right? All that kind of noise that you get. Any suggestions on kind of what should be some things to be thinking about in that playbook after you've had maybe an intro discovery meeting, maybe after you've done a demo or you've presented a little bit about your company, and now you kind of have that chasm between, okay, maybe they know a little bit about us to the point where they're willing to either, get into a proposal or potentially do a transaction. And in the B2B world, to your point, right, there could be a lot of people in that mix. that's happening, going on in that sort of blind spot, if you will, in the sales process?
Well, I always joke, and we're kind of saying it tongue in cheek, but it's the truth, right? Because if you looked at, your buyer's inbox, my guess is there's 15 emails, because you can tell when everybody got done with their pipeline meetings, because then they just go back to their office and they shoot off these meetings. Hey, just want to bump this up, just making sure, because their boss said, hey, what's going on with
Right, right,
Acme's deals,
right.
right? When everything's going, or in the old days when we were buyers, we used to always know when the close to the quarter, because you're going to get the better deal, right? So we're going to incentivize them with, hey, I got to get this in. Can I give you another 3%? Right. And so we're training buyers to do some of this, right? So we own this problem. So I think we talked a little bit about that, right? So it's not only intent data in the beginning, right? Or industry information in the beginning, or just micro and macro knowledge of that, right? But it's really, we use case studies to get our name in front of people and to get kind of the door open, but we don't use case studies post presentation, right?
Mhm,
Post discovery. And
mhm.
how do we maximize those case studies even more, right? Of saying, okay, let's talk a little bit about, because now that I know your problem even more, I don't need to use my 3 generic case studies that I use for everybody. Let's really be specific about how XYZ is going to solve the problem, the pain, whatever phrase we're using to solve for. Because if that isn't there, and where it is on the priority, right? Because there may be a strategic initiative that just bumped everything off the table and is now becoming the number one priority where the spend is over their organization. So if we don't have that, and we really sometimes don't want to have those crucial conversations with our prospects, right? Or with our internal champions, if it's a large organizations, or just if we're selling to consumers, because we have a lot of clients that sell to consumers. It's just saying, where are you at on this, right? Everything that's going on, are you pulling back on spending, or are you moving forward on spending, and where are we at, right? And now let's try to figure this out. So I think a lot of it depends on the industries that you're telling to, and know the ebbs and flows of that, and just kind of know what's going on in all those environments, but really going back in with those value adds, right? And many times it's not that they don't want to answer you, it's just that they're busy, right? Just think about the average
Yeah,
buyer's
yeah,
day,
yeah,
right? The average purchaser's
right.
day, and what everything that's going on with them, and what are they in fear of, right? Headcounts are getting reduced in sales. They're also getting reduced across the board, right? So the people are fearful of all those things.
Brandon, I think an interesting application of the roundtable approach might be not always at the early top of the funnel, quote unquote, and finding new prospects, but inviting existing prospects that are in that middle zone there to
Mhm.
keep engaged, right, and to be involved, other than just having again that email about, hey, what's going on.
Yeah. No, I think there's so many layers of value on the virtual roundtables. I mean, what we talked about at the beginning, just being able to establish yourself in the middle of a network. Like I love the term "go to network" instead of "go to market," and what I mean by that is how do you go into this industry and try to get into the middle of the industry and start building relationships and building influence and become known. So that when the calls do come in, people recognize you. And I think that what I've seen with these roundtables is it's another way to invite people to engage with you and something that's valuable for them without being a pitch, without
Yeah,
being a
yeah,
sales
right.
opportunity. But yeah, you can, you know, invite your database of people that want to be a part of it, and you're saying, hey, this isn't a sales pitch, it's not a webinar, it's a peer-to-peer discussion. Here's how it takes place. We set the stage for about 2 minutes, and then we open it up and everybody starts sharing what's going on, and you're learning from each other and with each other and networking in your own industry. And as the moderator, you're right smack in the middle of it.
And I've
Yeah,
seen people really use that, and even at exhibits, at events, getting prospects to these events, and using that to kind of drive that, wedge that sale forward, right? By putting them in those types of environments, or even if it's the traditional trade show or an event that you're exhibiting at, hey, bring it in, and let me introduce you to some folks, or set up some lunches, or some just coffee clutches to talk to people that are using my product or service, whatever that is. I think you could really be creative on moving deals that have stalled, and using, like we've talked about, I think, using these type of environments, and I also think we want to do everything by Zoom because it's easy, but sometimes we see getting people on a plane or getting them in a car and going having a face-to-face conversation moves things forward, or getting them at an event, right? Or getting them to a round table. Moving that some way in shape or
Yeah.
forms gets stalled deals going, or getting deals that are languishing pipelines moving forward even faster.
Yeah, I think FaceTime, not FaceTime, but face to face time is becoming more and more important. Most companies want to go the easy route, and it's emails and voicemail. And if you get in front of somebody, it accelerates. It can accelerate it quickly. Again, if they're trained well to do it well, to add value and do discovery in a non-discovery systematic way, but make the person on the other side feel like they're being heard, and you're looking at their challenges and problems seriously. That face to face time, I just have seen some. In fact, I had a coffee meeting this morning, and that was a big part of the conversation of this guy just realizing I've just discovered and realized over the last 6 months how important it is for me to get out of the office and get in front of people. And I'm in my car going to different cities and doing coffees and lunches and all those types of things. I think that, we got relying on tech and used a lot of Zoom and everything. Of course, COVID was a bit accelerator of that, but getting back to being human is really important.
I was thinking about that, and I may be in. There's probably sales leaders out there that have never had field sales experience, right? So all they know is this, and
All they know
so
is Zoom. All they know is Zoom, or all they know is virtual.
yeah, and the importance of that. The important. I mean, listen. We're in a vacuum of trust. We say this all the time to all of our clients. You're in a vacuum of trust, and there's no better way to build trust than face to face. Not face to face like you did, Brandon, with your phone. I like that. I'm going to use that, but just being face to face or belly button. In the old days, we used to call it belly button to belly button with people. Right now, there is some value in going out and deliver the donuts. So we have codified that, but making sure that you're having real business conversations with folks, and just saying, hey, let's grab some lunch. Let's talk a little bit about that. You'll get more out of an hour and a half, 2 hour lunch than you will out of a 15-minute Zoom.
Yeah, and that, again, Tom, we talk about the go slow to move fast or shrink down. Hey, let's make the top of the funnel a little bit smaller, but make it higher quality and see how the data plays out.
We just talked about that. We have a client that does sponsorship sales, right? So just fewer, but go bigger, right? And make it more impactful for them as well as for everybody that's in the stadium or wherever the event is, and the importance of that. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's almost like Pac-Man. We want to put everything as an opportunity, and we're going to gobble it all up, and we're not going to gobble anything up. So how can I get a much smaller, really understand these businesses, really understand their problems, really understand the ICPs and where they sit on the org chart and decision making and power and all of that within an organization, and how can I move this sale forward or the opportunity forward or whatever it is forward. I really think that's important.
All right. Well, this has been really good. I have a handful of good notes even for myself that I want to think about for my own business. Any final thoughts here before we wrap up? If there was going to be kind of one key takeaway that you would give to the people listening on when they're actually, let's hit this question real quick. There was a question here from Jolie. What is the most common mistake you see when sales leaders create playbooks that actually make them less effective?
I love that.
And maybe that's a great way to end off here.
I think that's a great way to end on it.
Thank you.
I think it's really not means testing it, but really test. Look, there's a constraint. I'm a big theory of constraint guy. There's a constraint in every sales process, and there's a constraint in every sales playbook, and not really understanding where the constraint might be, and really means testing it. There was a gentleman I did some work with, and he was dogmatic on just, we're testing these messages with just a core group. Right. So you got a control group of, it's not rolled out to the entire team. It's a control group that you're testing these messages or this or that, or these components of the playbook on it. And I think it's it's probably a phrase that you guys are using, go slow to go fast, right? When you're creating the playbook, don't just rush through it to rush through it, right? But go slow to go fast, because once you get it, now you got it, right? And but you also realize that playbooks are dynamic, and
That's what I was going to say, right?
things
It's not like you
happen.
build one and
Right. You got to keep on adjusting them. It just doesn't sit the electronic playbook or the binders of the past that we used to get, right? They have to be constantly be adjusted. And I think that's the sales leader's role, besides the sales leader role of doing the one-on-one coaching, the sales leader role of, coaching the team up and giving them, doing, FaceTime, windshield time, driving around and creating the playbook. And I think that's the most important thing. I know you guys have had Mike Weinberg on, and he's, one of the best of just describing what the role of that sales leader is.
Mhm. But Nicholas, you're talking about change. Like they've got to create something and then want to actually go in and change it. Like we don't
Yeah.
like change. We just want to create it, put it in a nice 3-ring binder, and look at it 5 years later and go, "Wow, that was great."
You should see some of the scripts are for the clients that we take over. They're like, "Oh yeah, we got it all taken care of." I get a script. I'm like, "This was written before COVID, even." And so you have to constantly be changing that. Or they brought a consultant in, and the consultant probably didn't know maybe how to create a really good dynamic sales playbook, and so they created X. It got delivered, and that's what they're rolling through. And you'll see the reps will start making changes on their own, because they'll get that dynamic feedback from the marketplace. And
Yeah.
you don't want everybody playing off as the different hymn, though, because you're never going to win on Saturday afternoon for college football. So you got to really adjust it. You do make adjustments, right? You go into the halftime and say, okay, we thought we were going to be able to run up the middle. We can't. Now we're going to passing, right? Or we're going to X, Y, Z. And so you have to make adjustments. You can't have a sales conversation without having a sports analogy. So I kind of fit 2 in there just for that.
no.
Well, other than Back to the Future, we didn't have our movie quote or movie analogy without Carson here. So might as well do. Hey, look, we got
Well,
football season starting up. I just saw like first college games are this Saturday. I don't
they
think
are this Saturday, right? We've got, yeah.
not major games
Get
this
earlier and
weekend.
earlier every time, every year.
Yeah, they're putting dynamic games in the beginning, right? Just because they capture the eyeballs.
Oh yeah, that first well, I guess there's like week 0, there's a few
Yeah.
games, and then week 1 you got like what is that? Ohio State, Texas. That's going to be a big game week 1.
Yeah.
So, Nick,
Got
if
it?
someone
No.
wanted to learn more about you or your company, where should they go, connect with you, and so forth?
Yeah, that's very kind. So I'm on LinkedIn, right? So if they're watching this on LinkedIn, they could find me there, Nicholas Luisi or Nick Luisi. Salesperformanceteam.com is our main website, Nick at Salesperformance Team. We've got a bunch of goodies, right? Kind of how to create a playbook and all that. Propaganda and information is available. Go to salespack, P-A-C-K salesperformanceteam.com. We're an information first, right? We talked a little bit about that. I want to provide as much information to the sales profession as I can, to business owners, to people wanting to do better. So I give everything away. We have a book, right, that they could get. Just send me an email and we'll mail it to you. It's an airplane book. Happy holidays. So absolutely. So we're here to help everybody.
Great.
Well,
Well, been
thanks
very
for that.
valuable.
Thank you for that, Nicholas. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but thanks, Aaron. Happy holidays. I walked into Target the other day. It was filled with Halloween stuff already, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I was actually
Costco already has like nativity
Christmas
scenes,
trees. Yeah,
Christmas trees, and things like that. Yeah,
yeah. Oh man, crazy. Slow down, everybody. Slow down to move fast. Slow
that's
down.
right.
So
Slow
we're
down.
going. We're accelerating the holidays. Well, I guess the numbers came out for Target and all that today. I was watching CNBC before I got on this during lunchtime. So, we're gonna have to bolster numbers somehow.
There you go.
Pumpkin spice for everybody.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks again, Nicholas. Good stuff. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, that was good. I mean, I like that we can get back to some of the basics with what leaders need to be doing and consistently doing. And I think getting back into training, having a dynamic sales playbook, constantly learning because everything's changing so quick. And I love that. I love that what you shared too about first taking a look at deliverability? Are your phone is your phone popping up as spam? Is your email delivery going? Because so much of marketing will look at their open rates and they might be 70%, but it doesn't really mean anything because the email client on the other end opened it, but no human eyeballs ever looked at it. So there's so many things there that could just be misleading without really taking out the knife and opening things up. So great stuff, Nicholas.
All right. Well, thanks for all the good comments. Hopefully we get Carson back next week sooner than later. He's in the middle of kind of a major overhaul with his job and his position, but we're going to get him back here. So until then, I'll end off, if I can remember what he always says. Happy